So these questions I've collected from audience members. I have asked them, okay, what are your most burning questions about group piano? And I've narrowed it down to these. I'm excited. I think it'll be really beneficial. But the first question I wanted to actually open our discussion is kind of the why behind group lessons. This question actually came from a teacher who I believe is still on the fence as to whether they even want to make the effort to transition to group, especially since they're so comfortable with their one-on-one traditional lesson style anyways. So Daniel, what results would teachers actually get from group lessons that are different from their one-on-one lessons that they're currently teaching?
That's so fascinating. So the why of group lessons. That's a really great question and not one that I receive very often. A lot of times when I talk to people, they've kind of already mentally worked that out themselves. But yeah, let's go there. So here's a couple whys that I had. One, I looked at the number of hours that I had available to teach and thought, okay, this is the max amount that I can make. It's going to be very, very difficult to get to some of my life goals and work-life balance goals teaching one-on-one. So a big why for me was that work-life balance and income goals that I had. However, in thinking about group, I had a lot of question marks because I'd never done it before, really. Not on a week-to-week basis, not where it was the primary program in the studio. I had done group summer camps, but I'd never done just a week in, week out after-school program where I'm seeing 5 kids at a time. And so mentally in my head, I thought, okay, I'm going to try this experiment. But if educationally the results aren't good, like if I'm seeing that the kids are slowing down, they're not having a good time, it's a substandard educational experience for them, I don't care how much money I make. I'm not doing that. So what I really strived to do was not only provide a fun experience for the kids, but make sure that it was at least as good, if not better, educationally. Now, here's what's ended up happening. It actually really surprised me when I put kids in this environment and necessarily had to begin teaching in a different way. I became better as a teacher because the pressure on me was a little bit greater. And as I became a better teacher, naturally the kids got better. And so I would say that a big why for me that allowed me to continue doing it. In other words, I felt comfortable from an ethical perspective continuing to offer this product was just that I actually saw the kids go through their books faster than they ever did on one-on-one. And it's because they had more time with me. I began teaching them in a different way where I helped those kids to become more independent. And I, really go into this in my training in a lot more depth. But I had a lot to learn about time management, how to coactively participate with this 6-year-old to get them to become an independent music maker on their own. And I think the environment of group lessons lends itself to that in a way that, structurally speaking, a one-on-one lesson, you could never do in a one-on-one lesson what you can do in a group lesson. So I think those are my 2 big whys.
No, I love that. I would definitely speak to that and add on to that as well because previous to group lessons, I'm sure this is a common thing for many teachers, is we have students that only touch the piano during lesson time. So a big selling point for me was, hey, if my students are only touching the piano during the 30 minutes they have with me, why not increase that to 50 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour with me so that at least they're getting like double the practice that they're normally getting, even if it's still only practicing that one time per week. But what I saw was actually more than I expected because they were forced to, with the SGL model, kind of work through their own problems, their practice problems, and think for themselves instead of relying so heavily on me to guide them and kind of hold their hand in their one-on-one lessons. They actually learned how to practice on their own in the lesson itself. So they are now going home knowing how to practice, which I think the biggest problem was they didn't know how to practice before. So now all of these parents are like, so and so didn't practice at all in their private lessons, and now all of a sudden they're practicing in their group lessons. Like, how is that possible? And I think that
Yes.
alone made it so worth it for me.
That is one of the unintended benefits. Like I mentioned some unintended benefits earlier, and I just mentioned one, but that one right there is a huge one. That I was able to say to parents, like, yeah, if they only practice here at the studio, they're still going to progress better than they did before. And then, again, as you said, seeing kids go home and actually begin to practice at home. The reason why, though, is interesting. It's because the music feels easy now. It feels easy because they actually, for the first year, at least in my studio, the kids learned all their music with me. So when they went home, they weren't learning, they were rehearsing. They were rehearsing something that they already felt skilled at. And a child is far more likely to do something that feels easy versus something where it's like, oh my word, how do I do this? I practiced for the first line with Miss Jess, but these other 3 lines, I don't know. And so kids have this learned helplessness where they wouldn't want to move on farther in the song, or they would struggle through it. Whereas in your environment and my environment, they actually have the time to learn entire songs. It just totally changes the game.